Members with the BC General Employees Union will be marching from Victoria City Hall to the BC Legislature this morning. The union says more than 19,700 workers will be on the picket lines today right across the province. Striking workers include those from BC Liquor and Cannabis Stores, the Liquor Distribution Branch, and the Commercial Vehicle Safety and Enforcement Weigh Scales. For more on that and the state of negotiations, we have reached Paul Finch. He is the president of the BCGEU. Good morning to you, Paul.
Good morning, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time with us. Tell us about this march heading to the legislature in Victoria this morning. Just how big are you expecting this to be?
Well, every single civil service worksite in the province, in the city of Victoria and Greater Victoria is on strike as of this morning. As you mentioned, there's over 19,000 members across the province. And what that means is that we'll converge on Centennial Square at approximately 11 a.m. And march down to the legislature. And we'll have speakers representing public and private sector unions from across the province at 12. Obviously, to send a very clear message to government to get back to the negotiating table with a reasonable offer.
And tell us about the state of negotiations this morning. I mean, what is the latest there?
Well, they're non-existent. In July, we broke off talks. Our members rejected the government's proposal, which is essentially the same proposal that they still have on the table. They've warmed it up with a 0.5% increase, and they rejected that by a 93% strike vote. We're a very democratic union, but we got called back to the table by government on September 29th. And of course, when we showed up, what we found was that 0.5% increase to the offer, which is really an insult. And an attempt, I would say a surreptitious attempt by government to drag out that information and to make it look like a negotiation. They were 3 hours late to the table. And then, we asked if they had any power to kind of go back and forth. Of course, we understand that bargaining is about, both sides kind of giving and taking here. And government wasn't willing to move off of that 0.5% increase. We were willing to move back and forth with them, and we did amend our offer. But, clearly what we found is that they didn't show up to negotiate. They showed up to create the illusion of negotiations, probably to get other public sector unions further along or back to the table who've been standing in solidarity with the BCGEU.
Earlier this morning, we spoke with Bo Chen, who's the executive director of Able BC, and they represent private liquor stores and liquor licensed establishments, about the impact of the BCGEU strike on their members. I just want you to hear a little bit of what he said.
And it's very unfortunate in this dispute that small businesses in our industry we're just caught in the middle of this, right? We're not part of the dispute. We're caught between two huge entities. And I think the way, if you ask the operators in our space, they really just see it as an option to have agency actually in their business, to have the option to choose between if you're sourcing from here or from there, right? I think from a revenue standpoint, it's all good, because at the end of the day, you're still making sure that the overall economy of BC is still, stimulated. And the positive of it is also folks that are in these sectors, they can continue to run their business as viable as possible, and at the same time still keep people employed.
Now he's talking about the small business owners who rely on liquor sales along with their food sales in pubs and restaurants, and not being able to get what they need, being affected by this and not really having any alternatives. Do you worry that, rather than getting what you want, in this case, you could see changes made to the way liquor is distributed in this province to go around any future job action?
Well, we're not relying on liquor as the primary driving force of our job action. I think if any attempt by an NDP government to privatize the liquor system would be met with an incredible and massive escalation on our part. And in fact, I think it would seal their fate as a political party in this province. But I'll just say that, we very specifically, did not take out liquor distribution for as long as we could. So for the first 3 weeks of the strike, not a single liquor store, cannabis store, or warehouse was impacted by the strike. We tried our best to try and avoid, impacting the general public. But the crux of the issue here is that government is essentially by not coming back to the table with a reasonable offer is creating this issue, not just for, I just want to say not just for small business and a number of other areas that rely on the liquor and cannabis distribution system, but also across the board. There's a lot of services that British Columbians rely on that are now behind picket lines. That was unavoidable eventually, but for the first 3 weeks of this strike, we really minimized the impact to the general public, hoping that government would get to the table and negotiate.
This is also having an impact on Student Aid BC. A lot of students logging into, the website looking for the status of their loans and finding out that they're getting no information because there's nobody refreshing the site right now. I mean, is this the kind of impact you want to have?
Well, no, it's unfortunate government won't come back to the table and negotiate, but I will say student union leaders from across the province have been outspoken in supporting the strike action. They understand, many of them, graduates will eventually go into the civil service. They understand that we need good family supporting jobs. And they also understand this strike the consequences of this strike are really solely on government at this point. They've failed to come and negotiate reasonably at the table, and that's true for the variety of services that are now being impacted.
How far apart are you and the government in the last time you spoke face to face?
Well, it really hasn't changed from July, but I'll say that today, as of Monday, government's latest offer was 2% in each year with additional money for targeted low wage redress that we proposed. Our position is 4% in each year with also targeted money for low wage redress. And so the simplest way of putting this is that the government is at 2% a year and we're at 4% a year. And so I do think there is middle ground there, and government is unwilling to move towards it.
The union has been expanding job action since the beginning of September, and so if things don't improve in negotiations between you and the province, or if negotiations don't get back on track, what is next from the union's point of view as far as work stoppages go and the impact on the public?
Well, we've negotiated comprehensive essential service levels, but we're also trying to be careful not to take out some of the critical services that British Columbians rely on. That's not always possible, but more than half of our bargaining unit is on strike. And so the entire purpose of the strike really is to get government to make a reasonable offer at the bargaining table. And I wanted to say what that means. Civil servants, we want to go to work. We want to, we take pride in serving British Columbians, but, it takes a lot to get civil servants to go on strike. This is the most significant strike we've had in 40 years. And the reason is that the cost of living pressures have gone up so high that the average civil servant makes 2.7% less than the average worker in British Columbia. It's really untenable at this point, and government cannot balance poor fiscal management on the backs of the civil service.
How do you like dealing with the NDP as the party devoted to labor?
Well, I don't. I'm not really sure I'd use the word devotion.
Traditionally, the NDP has been the party that supports labor.
I think there's a truism to that. But at the end of the day, unless we're using the classical Roman term of devotion, I think that really what we're looking at here is, a pragmatic political stance that is essentially out of touch with working people in this province. And so, when you say labor, and that can mean a lot of different things, I think we're in the midst of a massive political realignment here in Canada and across the globe. And I think that's shown by this turn towards austerity and frankly, a lot of political positions that are not supported by labor. I'll tell you what labor wants in this province. We want good family supporting jobs, a good economy, and safe communities. And access to medical care. It's pretty simple. And this government is not delivering that.